Hello there, this is Rom Wills coming back at you with yet another podcast. Cultural sex appeal. Now, what's cultural sex appeal? Now, anybody who's followed me and paid attention know that's my main thing in coaching. A man getting his sexual side up, getting his sexual aura up. Because, the social side, I'm not big on that. Now, cultural sex appeal. Now, you get some people, on that looks, money, status thing. And out of the three, I give you the looks thing. That, trust me, that's going to help you, if to really get a woman to really feel you. The money and status thing, you might be dealing with an acceptable hoe, or somebody who, they'll get the bag from you, but then hook up with that guy with the actual sex appeal. And I can't think of it why anybody would want that. But what's cultural sex appeal? Now, one of the biggest mistakes people make, especially in that when they get too much on looks, they think it's a universal look that everybody's going to go crazy over, and it's not. That's set. The looks are enhanced by someone's subcultural perspective. I give you an example. I saw a couple the other day. Couples the other day where both the man and the woman were very tatted up. In fact, and they were both white, just to be clear. They were both white. And, you had one man who was bald. He had tats on his head, everything. And it wasn't like one of those like gang member type of things, but you could tell he was in that, he was in a community where tats were important. And that's a very important thing. See, that enhances it. See, people think it's just some raw stuff. And really, honestly, there's a cultural chauvinism there, because the guys who tend to promote that thing the most tend to be middle-class white men who want to think they look better than everybody else. But the reality is there's a cultural thing to it. For example, with the tattoo thing. So a man to appeal to a woman in there, I mean, she might take a notice of the man's bone structure, but just as much notice of his tats and how he wears them. And that's a beauty thing. That enhances the beauty, or it enhances his look. Or if you even go within the black community, if you, of course, shout out always to Master Teacher BGS for the Octane model, because it takes in consideration the different classes. Now, you get the woman in the hood. A guy might turn her on who, he might have a bunch of tats, locks, or hair looking all types of ways, some gold grill or something. That's attractive to her. That's sexy. That turns her on. Somebody looking at that rough look. But then as you move up in class, the look that turns the woman on ain't going to be that rough look. If the woman's a 92 octane, she's a social climber. She has dual degrees. She's a member of a sorority. She wants a man that looks a certain way. She might tolerate a tattoo on the dude. But if he got a gold grill, she's probably like, nope. And he probably had to be more clean cut. Even if he has a beard, that beard has to look a certain way. There's a certain clean look. There's a uniform. And then he might not have to have that rawness. But he has to look competent. He has to look professional. He has to look more clean cut. And then when you talk about maybe a spiritual community, now that takes it to a different thing. That takes it to a different level. Like if you have someone who's more African centered, their idea of physical attraction, or who's like more ideal to them, probably have to have more African type of features. Or stereotypically, I'll say stereotypically. Technically, everything is present in Africa. All features are present in Africa. Or with Africoid people. So he might have to look a certain way. Maybe his hair don't have to be pressed or something or cut. maybe a little bit longer, maybe like a little bit out more, and definitely coarse. You know, maybe a broader nose, chocolate skin. But then you contrast that to maybe a more bourgeois background, then the look might have to be more like a browner European type or browner phenotype, like associated phenotype associated with European. And then of course even then is the culture within there. And that's all over the world. That's why I always say there's no, like, you get some people that try to act like, oh, the golden ratio and stuff. It's like, first of all, women don't be taking out some measuring stick and measuring a guy. When they looking at a man, they looking at him through their own subcultural, cultural, racial, ethnic lens. It's not a pure thing. That's why a woman can look at, you get many women, they can look at some guy who, you can measure them, their face is symmetrical, they got height, everything, but they'll say, nah, he don't got no flavor. He don't have any flavor. It's like the difference in two turkeys. You cooking the turkeys. Hopefully the vegans listening don't get offended, but just go with me. You can get one turkey, hey, it could be perfect proportions, look beautiful, but you don't put any seasoning on it. And then people are like, but then you get the other one, they like, oh, it might not even be the same thing, but they season that joint up. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Like just like you have in some cultures on the continent in Africa where scarification is normal. Or I read about where like in some Pacific Islands, they getting all these razor cuts all over them. It's different. Or even just in Western culture, like a 6-pack ab is bigger in the United States than other places. You have some Western cultures, it's not as big a deal. As long as you have a generally good shape. So, and really to understand why, because it's a combination of form and function. Because if it's a culture where they prefer the men to be more hands-on, they're going to want a rougher looking guy. But if it's more of a more slanted toward intellectualism, then that's what they might want. And in fact, that's why there's always different looks. I mean, y'all remember when there was a time when everybody's talking about metrosexuals, then lumbersexuals. And there'll probably be something different coming up too. But the cultural aspect is very important to understand. And so for the guys, you get some guys, they worried about like, oh, I don't look like this, or I don't have this height. Well, that depends on what culture you want to mess with. Like if you're in the black community and you want to mess with some ratchet women, well, shoot, you better hang out at the tattoo parlor. You better figure out, you probably need to get that prison body. You probably need to let the hair grow out, have a rougher look. But then if you want to move up, you want to mess with that higher class woman, shoot. Hey, you better be in a barbershop every week. You better have those suits fitted and right. So that style is going to be a thing in there. So I want people to think about that. See, one of the things I'm seeing, people miss the nuances, the complexities. If you really look at who's pushing it, it's usually somebody, and they pushing it from their cultural perspective, but it's not a universal cultural perspective, and that's the key. That's why, and I've known women to look at some guys who, you could say from a bone structure thing that they would say, oh yeah, they're attractive, but they ain't gonna mess with them because they don't fit their cultural ideal or what they're looking for. So, there's always something for y'all to think about, and I'll get back with y'all later. Peace and blessings.